Annyeonghaseyo. Good day to everybody. My name is Linda Tino Ledoirin. I am working at the headquarters of UNESCO in Paris. UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. I am very honored to be with you today. I am so happy to see that there are students listening to us, young people who are interested in a few minutes of dialogue with me. So thank you very much for your presence. I would also like to thank the organizers, especially the team of Professor Gwangju Shin and his excellent dream team of young people who have tirelessly worked to have a successful World Human Rights Cities Forum. So I am talking to you from Paris, and I am glad that we are connecting from different regions. I would like to make this session an interactive one. So I hope that some of you will be able to turn on your cameras. I already see a few faces, so if you would like to turn on your camera, I would like to make this as a conversation with you. It is not a formal conference, it is not a formal lecture, but I would like to have a dialogue with you so that we can make the best of this session. So, my dear students and young people, if you can turn on your cameras, I would like to see your faces. Thank you very much. I see some of you now. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I would like to start by asking you a bit about, if you're willing to tell me your name, your age, and where you are from. So that would be our coming from and your age. Who would like to start? Please don't be shy.
I'll start. My name is Wilson. I'm from the United States, but I've been living in Seoul, South Korea for the last 7 years. And I am 30. As you know, Korean age is a little different, so I get confused. But I'm 31 years old, I think.
Hi, Wilson. 31 years old. That's the age when I came to Paris to work at UNESCO at 31 years old. Yes. Who would like to follow? Just to say hello and tell us where you are from. Nobody wants to take the floor yet to follow Wilson? Okay, maybe later on, when I open the floor again, the young students will be able to share a few of their thoughts and then tell us where they are from, and so we will be able to have this dialogue session. Anyone? Last call before we move on. Somebody's raising their hand. No one wants to say hello. It's fine. We will do it later. Okay, so it's a very personal testimonial that I will be sharing with you today. I did not prepare any PowerPoint presentation. I did not prepare any notes. I wanted to just speak to you coming from the heart, maybe tell you about my experience, what I am doing now at UNESCO, where I came from myself, and also try to share with you and exchange with you different ideas. So I think when we talk about youth as change makers, it is really a very, very relevant theme, because we have seen over time that youth has always been a crucial age group that gives the impetus for change, for innovation, for bright ideas, for creativity. So what I would like to impart with you at the end of this dialogue session is somehow we would be able to inspire you, even in a very little way, that you have the power as young people, young women and men, to be able to be change makers, even in a simple level in your own communities, in your own schools, in your own workplaces. And that is the simple goal that I would like to achieve today with you. So, first, I would like to tell you just a personal story of my the pathway that I have taken. So I came from the Philippines. I was born in the Philippines back in the 70s. I was raised in a Catholic school for girls, a very strict education system. The Philippines is very religious Catholic country, and so there has been a lot of disciplinary subjects in school. We were taught a lot about also the international community, international relations. And one of the subjects that I enjoyed at that time is called social studies. And I think I was 10 years old when I first heard about going international, about the United Nations, and all these things that make us dream about to become citizens of the world. So in my social studies class, each of us in a class of, I think we were 20, 25 girls age 10, who were asked to do some report on different countries of the world. This is to make the students aware of the different histories, the different cultures of the countries. And at that time, my teacher asked us to pick the name of the country that we will be making a report about in class. And by chance, I picked France as a country. And so at that point, I still didn't know, at 10 years old, I didn't know a lot about France, except the TV shows that I watched about Jacques Cousteau or some cooking lessons on TV, but I didn't know anything about France. So I started doing some research. I still remember we still had encyclopedias at home at that time. So I made my research in the Encyclopedia Americana. I looked at France, all the articles that I could read. I made report on the history of France, the political institutions, the culture, etc. And then I came across a very beautiful picture of the Eiffel Tower. So the Eiffel Tower was there, and just another picture that came beside that photo is a photo of UNESCO, because that photo was very emblematic for me. I can still remember that black and white photo, and my curiosity started to emerge. What is UNESCO? And so I read about UNESCO being, as I said, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. At 10 years old, you wouldn't understand what that means. So I made some research on my own, even after doing my report in class. All of the girls did reports on their own. So there was really a very productive session where each and every one reported about their own countries assigned to them. Now, this became for me some sort of a mystery of what UNESCO's work is about. When I did my research, I started to understand what the importance is of an international organization born out of the ashes of the Second World War to bring peace to mankind, to try to work with different nations, with different governments, so that peace, mutual understanding, intercultural dialogue, and sustainable development could be achieved at the international level. And so from that time on, I think I was inspired and told myself that one day I hope that I will be able to work at UNESCO, whatever it takes. And so I tried to follow a path where in my education, I tried to learn to speak French. Because I knew French was one of the official languages of the United Nations, I took up political science as my course at the university. I also took some subjects in international relations back home in the Philippines. And so building that dream, I was trying to anticipate the needs that I would have if I would like to pursue a career in the United Nations. I think now the younger generation, you have no problem about acquiring knowledge online. At that time, we didn't have the internet. We only had, as I told you, the encyclopedias. We were looking at the printed word. We had books and we had to go to the library. So now I think you have the power to go further, go the extra mile, and do some research on your own to find out about different cultures in different countries. So the pattern that I followed from that time that I learned about UNESCO is, I think, what is defining me, myself as a person, and the devotion to the cause of UNESCO, as I said, in building peace in the minds of women and men, is still the same belief, the same goal that I have, even if I'm just an individual, one of the many people working here at UNESCO. So I would like to tell you more about the work of UNESCO. It is an international organization with 193 member states around the world. We are working with governments who are linked with the themes of education, the natural sciences, the social and human sciences, culture, and communication and information. I am working in the social and human sciences. This is what we call the soft sciences. This is where we try to understand the different social transformations happening in the world. What are the causes of conflicts? What does it take to make and build democratic institutions? What are the different causes of inequalities in our world today? How can we build our knowledge and understanding of these different social ills besetting our societies? And most of all, what are the possible solutions to these problems? So the social and human science sector of UNESCO has a broad range of topics. And I am sure that you, young people of South Korea, you know the historical importance of Gwangju as a city where the mobilization of the democratization movement that happened in the 1980s has become a very important milestone in history. And so this is something also that UNESCO is valorizing. The democratization movement in Gwangju is part of the memory of the world of UNESCO. And this is the type of social transformations that our sector is trying to understand. So when I first worked at UNESCO, I was 31, like Wilson. I worked in the democracy and governance section, and I was exposed to the different dynamics that played in building democratic institutions. I found out a lot about how civil society is very important in building democracy in a society. So there are many actors at play in building these dynamics to build democratic societies. And there is also the very important issue of youth participation, of youth engagement in not only within civil society, but also youth having a voice in the political arena. So that has been a big realization for me on how youth voices are very important, so that there is a genuine consultation coming from the decision makers. And that is also the reason why right now I am trying to advocate for the enhancement of a structure in cities. We call them the city youth councils. City youth councils are bodies within the municipality, within the city, of young people who give advice to the municipal council, and they give their thoughts, their voices, their ideas, and they can also, some of them can even enact laws. Some of them have budget envelopes to design, plan, and implement their own activities in their communities. So this is something that I am currently doing a research on. I am co-authoring a book which will be published by the end of the year on city youth councils. And I hope that one day I will be able to organize a webinar maybe, or a conference with city youth councils around the world who are working hard to be the genuine voices of youth in the city governments. So just to go back to the issue of the social and human sciences sector, I am also working as the program staff responsible for the anti-racism and anti-discrimination program of UNESCO. So, as you may know, UNESCO has been, back in the 1950s, very, very involved in the study of racial prejudice, of race. Why are people racist? So back in the 1950s, UNESCO organized a panel of intellectuals, philosophers, anthropologists, biologists, who studied scientifically the way that racism is besetting our societies. Now, they found out that race is actually just a myth, because we are one as humankind, and the different genetic variations from the different people with different colors of the skin do not really reflect the differences. So it is very, very, it was a very compelling study that demonstrated that race is a myth. We may have differences in the colors of our skin, etc. But then when you look at the scientific foundations of their research, you will understand that we are all the same. We may be different, but there is no foundation, there is no scientific foundation, especially now that we are a globalized community. We are an international society. So there are there's a wide range of genetic variations that will not be able to prove that we should be categorized by race. So these studies in the 1950s led to different declarations from the international community condemning racial prejudice. So there is now there was in 1978 the declaration, the UNESCO Declaration on Racial Prejudice. And then over the years, since the 1980s, UNESCO has continued to build different networks around the world, also working with different ministries of education so that the curriculum, the textbooks, the manuals that you use in school will teach us that we should all be trying to achieve a community of one people around the world and not identify ourselves as this race or that race, this color of skin or that color of skin. So this is the job that I have now at UNESCO. We are trying to develop new tools, new mechanisms, new methods to make people understand, especially the young people, that we should be all working to take away all the barriers that make racial prejudice very active in society. So how do we do this? What we have devised as UNESCO is that we created a program which is called the Masterclass Against Racism and Discrimination. This is a training program that is targeting young people from the high school level up to the university level so that we give them the knowledge and the tools and the understanding to fight against racism and discrimination in their communities. This masterclass is going to look into the deep individual, psychological, and social mindsets that we have, the attitudes, the behavior that we develop unconsciously sometimes, that we try to categorize people. This is the type of understanding that we would like to develop among the young people so that they themselves become champions against racism. So we developed this in UNESCO, and we have been trying to scale up the masterclass series. We are partnering with the different cities within what we call the International Coalition of Inclusive and Sustainable Cities that I am coordinating at UNESCO, so that we get the decision makers and the policy makers in the city committed to help young people understand this social phenomena, which is racism. I would like to show you a short video on how we organized the very first masterclass at UNESCO here in Paris back in November 2019. I am not sure if there are subtitles, but I just would like you to see how we try to organize this masterclass, making sure that we have young people interact with the professors in the masterclass, raise the questions, even the taboo questions that they have been thinking about. It was an open dialogue with the professors. We also organized a lot of in-depth training workshops which delved into different themes. And in the end, the most important part of it is the expression of the commitments that the young people have built by their own willingness to do different projects in their schools and communities. So if I may ask Yana to put the video on so that our participants will be able to have a glimpse of what a masterclass is at UNESCO.
la lutte contre le racisme et les discriminations?
Le racisme, c'est un mélange de trois facteurs. Le premier facteur, c'est ce qu'on appelle la catégorisation. Il y a eu deux choses qui ont été rajoutées à cette catégorisation. La première chose, c'est la hiérarchisation. C'est-à-dire, dès le moment où on a fait des groupes dès le XVIIIe siècle qui étaient basés sur l'apparence physique des individus, dès le départ, on a mis une hiérarchie en décidant que certains groupes étaient meilleurs que d'autres et étaient supérieurs à d'autres.
Est-ce qu'il y a une question?
Vous venez de parler de hiérarchie, et sur quoi l'humanité s'est-elle basée pour faire une hiérarchie?
Eh bien, sur juste les apparences physiques, ce qui est complètement délirant.
Alors c'est aussi une bonne question. Je pense pas que c'est une discrimination, donc je pense que c'est très bien comme ça. Et on peut aussi être reconnu à notre juste valeur dans notre catégorie et montrer qu'on peut faire des très belles choses.
Chacun, où qu'on soit, chacun, chacune, on peut faire quelque chose, même si ça paraît tout petit, c'est quelque chose qui permet d'avancer. Et puis après, il y a évidemment les lois qui empêchent la discrimination et qui peuvent aussi nous protéger contre le racisme. C'est important de se souvenir qu'elles existent.
Moi, au collège, je voulais faire une voie générale. Sauf que ma conseillère d'orientation en a décidé autrement.
Donc pour répondre à ta question, je ne saurais pas quoi te dire sur l'endroit de lutte contre les discriminations dans l'audiovisuel, par exemple, parce qu'en fait, personne ne s'est emparé de ce problème.
On va appeler les représentants des différents ateliers qui se sont déroulés au cours de l'après-midi pour venir présenter leur liste d'engagement.
On proposait d'aller dans les autres classes des établissements pour partager ce qu'on a appris lors de cette journée à l'UNESCO.
Ensuite, nous avons pensé à créer une antenne associative.
Dans notre groupe, on a d'abord commencé par s'interroger sur pourquoi les médias ont plus d'influence peut-être qu'une personne seule.
Les outils qui vont permettre de combattre et lutter contre le racisme et les discriminations sont favoriser le dialogue entre les personnes issues de différentes classes sociales, donner une image positive des personnes issues des quartiers populaires ou défavorisés, se respecter entre les individus, aussi avoir une bonne représentation des autres et plus de journalistes de milieux diversifiés.
La police se rapproche, que la police et les jeunes se rapprochent en faisant en sorte, par exemple, comme il a dit, développer des interventions dans les lycées. C'est vrai que ça se fait en élémentaire, mais après l'élémentaire, les jeunes sont plus en contact avec la police. Et c'est là que les idées diffèrent et que certains pensent que la police est leurs ennemis, pourtant pas du tout. Ils ne font que leur rôle.
On a été davantage ravis par votre enthousiasme, votre participation et votre engagement. Thank you very much for coming. And I wish you a good trip back home. And bring it all back to your people. Thank you. Super good.
The different commitments that these young students have expressed in the different master classes, not only in this particular session. One example that we had, that the students came up with was in a master class that we organized in a high school in Spain. What the young students committed to after attending the master class is they are building an observatory against racism and discrimination. What they are doing is to come up with a series of video clips, their own video clips that they produced with their own smartphones, with their own means, simple videos that show some different scenarios of different types of discrimination. So it could be anything about discrimination against a person with a disability, or a person who is an immigrant in their school, or any discrimination against LGBT students, for example. So these high school students are coming up with a series of short video clips that they are posting publicly in their, I think it is a YouTube channel, and then they come up with a way to promote this video so that the students in the whole school will be able to understand the different types of discrimination and how do we fight it. So that is one of the innovative mechanisms being implemented now by these Spanish students. Some of them committed to come up with social media campaigns. Now, young people, you are all very active. You are the masters of social media. You have Instagram, you have TikTok, you have Facebook. You can use all these tools to become yourselves as creators of innovative projects within your communities, with your peers, to be able to come up with messages that would work towards advancing different advocacy strategies to fight racism and discrimination. So some of the students are building their own social media campaigns. Some of them are organizing in their own schools poetry or essay writing contests against racism. We have every year the celebration of March 21 as the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So March 21 is Anti-Racism Day. This is this is a date that we could use as a way to organize, for example, different activities in your schools or in your communities to raise the awareness about racism and discrimination. So I would like to give the floor to some of you so that we could have a dialogue about what I just shared with you on the master classes. Maybe it was a very quick presentation of what a master class is, but I would like to get your thoughts if you have questions, or not only on the master class, on anything that I have mentioned so far. I would like to give you the floor. Don't forget, this is a dialogue session.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, yes. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. I am So-young from Seoul, and I am a undergraduate student in political science. And I was so inspired by your personal experiences and master class. And I had some questions about master's class and your experiences. First of all, I've heard that you were in Philippines when you're young. So as working as a UNESCO, I don't know, worker, worker,
yes.
Yeah. Does the background of your life impact your work and like your values that you're, because you're in the labor of teaching people about diversity. So did it affect you? And second one is that, like, what kind of effort can I make to go to UNESCO as a university student? Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. So young, that's it, right? Is that correct? Yes. Thank you very much for your questions. This is the type of dialogue that I would like to engage with. Indeed, as a young girl in the Philippines, at that time, travel was not very common, you know, and we didn't have the internet, as I told you. So reading was really the one of the best ways for us at that time, our generation, to learn about different cultures. perhaps I was also fortunate to be in a society where there is a lot of awareness on the political and economic situation at that time. I do not want to see there are parallels, but somehow there's some sort of similarities in our histories between the Republic of Korea and the Philippines. We were under dictatorship for many decades, and back in the 1980s, there was a revolution where civil society toppled the dictator at that time. So there was also a democratization movement, like what happened in Gwangju back in the 80s. We called it the People Power Revolution. At that time, I was in high school. Our generation has been awakened by these very strong social transformations happening. I think that is the thing that makes young people more curious about the outside world, because the Philippines became part of the international news when this was happening. And so us in the Philippines at that time, we were also very interested in knowing what is happening outside our country. So aside from the books, there was, of course, television and radio at that time. So it opened the horizons of our generation to look into the other cultures. Yes, I think living in the Philippines at that time was very crucial for me to try to aspire to learn more about different cultures, and to learn about the work of the international organizations like UNESCO within the United Nations. And when I was there in the Philippines, I did not mention, but I already worked at the World Health Organization for some time. This is another United Nations agency working on health issues. And in fact, at that time, it was in the 1990s, our regional director, our big boss at that time, was from South Korea, Dr. Sang Tae-han. He was an excellent diplomat, an excellent leader. He was very inspirational to us. He was very inspirational to me. Again, that opened new horizons for me to look into going outside my country to work abroad, not to forget my own values as a Filipino, not to forget that where I'm coming from, but to become perhaps someone who could be humbly learning more about other cultures, and also sharing with my international colleagues what is Filipino culture. So my studies, the education that I had in the Philippines, plus my experience working in an international organization back home in the Philippines in the World Health Organization. And then when I came here to France to study in a university, it's called the International Social Studies Institute, Sciences Po, here in Paris. And that made me even more aware of the different types of cultures that are, which shows the rich diversity of young people with different cultural backgrounds, with brilliant minds, brilliant ideas. That helped a lot in shaping my aspiration to work at UNESCO. I think when you expose yourself to international settings as that, there are two values that I think I have developed. First one is curiosity about the other cultures, curiosity about my neighbors, curiosity about my classmates. what are their backgrounds, and it's fascinating to know about the different backgrounds of my classmates at that time. Another value is humility. Humility in the sense that I have to listen to these people. I have to understand where they're coming from. I have to learn from them, from their own experiences. I was in a society, as I told you, a Catholic upbringing, and then I got exposed to another type of society where you have a different hodgepodge of different beliefs, different faiths, different backgrounds, different educational systems. So that type of humility, saying to myself that I have to perhaps unlearn some of the things that I have learned so that I will be able to achieve more knowledge. That means unlearning by taking out the different prejudices or the biases that I had as a young person, but now opening up my horizons and trying to understand the differences, the diversity of cultures. Now, after my studies in the Parisian University that I told you about, I also became very interested in the issue of human rights, and which is very relevant for our topic today because we are in the World Human Rights Cities Forum. And the research that I did in that university, it was about human rights in Southeast Asia. It was, of course, inspired by my experience as a young student, witnessing the social transformations in my own country from a dictatorship to a democratic society, how civil society was very crucial in toppling a dictatorship, for example. And of course, it happened in the different countries in Southeast Asia. Some of us have common histories, but what is the underlying power in those societies that are shifting towards democracy is the power of the civil society, the power of the people. My research was published into a book, and it was printed, and the title is Human Rights in Southeast Asia. When it was published, well, there hasn't been a lot of publications, especially in French at that time. So I was privileged enough to be invited to speak about the book, and because it was not yet well known at that time what the situation in Southeast Asia was here in this particular setting, especially in our Parisian University. So after that, I applied to UNESCO as an intern, and then I learned more about the ins and outs of an international organization. And fortunately, I was proposed a consultancy, assignment, short-term assignment at UNESCO. And then from then on, I think it has just continued. I have to admit that for 7 years, it was a very difficult time for me because it was an unstable job being a consultant, but finally I had a chance to become a permanent staff member at UNESCO after 7 years, as I said. So now I am in the social and human sciences sector, but I worked in the different sectors of UNESCO. I learned about the work of the education sector. At that time, I was working on human rights education. We were looking at how we can integrate in the school curriculum in the textbooks and in the manuals in school, how we can include a component of human rights in the school curriculum. I also work in the communication sector, where I worked on the concept of knowledge societies. So knowledge societies, this is a concept of where people are empowered to use their knowledge to the fullest, not only information, but knowledge in the noblest sense of leveraging the knowledge that you acquire and maybe using that knowledge to make a positive social change. Now, I think a mixture of all these experiences have led me to become passionate about my work. And of course, as I told you, curiosity, humility, they still remain as values for me. And I'm very proud to be in this team which is being led by a very strong leader, Gabriela Ramos, our Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences. She was at the opening session of our forum last Thursday, and she was in a plenary panel yesterday talking about racism and discrimination in cities. So I hope that one day we will be able to work with you on a special edition of the masterclass. And I know that the team of Professor Shin, which is also led by Yana in the Gwangju International Center, they are already designing a series of masterclasses in Gwangju. And hopefully, So-Yung, we can do that also in Seoul. And maybe Wilson can also be our advocate to organize a master class in Seoul. Why not? So I hope I answered your question, So-Yung. Any other comments? Maybe just comments, or if you don't have questions, maybe just comments on what I have presented so far. Hello.
안녕하세요.
Hello, yes.
안녕하세요. 저는 광주에서 온 고등학교 2학년 학생입니다. 저희 학교가 유네스코 학교라서 유네스코 동아리가 따로 마련되어 있는데 저는 유네스코 동아리의 리더를 맡고 있어요. 아무래도 동아리가 유네스코 동아리이다 보니까 학교에서 2달에 한 번씩 캠페인을 하는데 뭔가 색다른 캠페인을 진행해보고 싶은데 저희가 할 수 있는 건 포스터를 만들고 그 포스터에 대해서 설명하는 것밖에 없어서 저한테 약간 색다른 캠페인을 할 수 있는 조언을 주셨으면 해요. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. I listened to the interpretation. That's an excellent question. First of all, let me already commend you that there is already a willingness from you and your classmates and your peers to organize a campaign in your school. This is the very essence of our masterclass. We would like to empower you. As I told you, social media is a very powerful tool that is something that you can easily use. There are, of course, some people who misuse and abuse social media, but if you design a campaign that would be leading to a co-creation, a campaign, a project that you collectively devise, that you collectively design with your classmates, then that becomes more relevant for you because you own that project. There's ownership. You design together, you brainstorm, you think about what you can do together. And so it becomes a group work. So that is the very first very first criterion I think that you have to do. It has to be a participatory process where you involve all the people concerned in the project to brainstorm and think about what you can do together. So first, that is the process. And then secondly, you look at the different resources that you have. Can you organize, for example, a physical campaign in your school where you can bring in students physically? Are you still I think you are already in school, no? You are not in a lockdown. You were never in a lockdown, as far as I know. So you can already make some in-person activity in school, and that makes all the difference when you are there face to face with your classmates, with your peers. It is more. I think it is more meaningful when you are together in a physical space. Now, what you can also look at is to first come up with a, shall we say, a mechanism where you listen to the different experiences of the students. First, it is a diagnosis, meaning you first evaluate what is the problem, where does it come from, what are the manifestations of this problem. For example, have students experienced, for example, being isolated because of maybe the differences that they have with the rest of their classmates? Maybe there is a student who is very shy, and some of the more, shall we say, aggressive students tend to make fun of that student. You know, there are various ways of behavior that affect young students. Are there cases of bullying, for example, in the school? Are there cases of gender-based discrimination? What I mean is, are there usually male, or the boys, who usually think that they are superior than the girls? Are there cases like that in school? Then if so, maybe this is something that is worth examining. Why? Of course, we know we are all equal. There is no dominant gender. There is no inferior gender. So this is an opportunity for you, with the leaders in your school and yourself, to come up with different awareness raising, maybe debates, maybe conversations, to understand what makes these people dominate or discriminate, or to act in a behavior that is, shall we say, discriminatory or racist, or someone feeling superior than the other gender, for example. So the diagnosis is important. You have to understand what is the problem first, and then try to find some solutions. I know it's very difficult to find solutions, but sharing stories, brainstorming, that's the way that you can understand and deal with the problem. Why not organize maybe some debates in your school? You openly talk about the problems, and then with your teachers, you find a way to talk about what are the possible solutions. There is also an idea that we have been trying to use in the master classes. We do the role playing. Role playing meaning we come up with a script. It's like a theater performance, or maybe just a short skit, just a short performance, not necessarily a full-blown theatrical performance to show what is really happening in your school. You can do that. You can also do role playing in your class, small groups, where you can ask maybe someone who will act as the bully, the student who is aggressive, and then someone as the victim. And then you try to do a conversation with them, very instinctively, impromptuous conversation. And then you try to analyze and find ways on how to deal with the bully, how to deal with a racist person, how to deal with someone who is very aggressive. These are activities where you need not judge people. These are activities where you want to be very honest and open and curious and humble so that you understand the different points of view of each one of them. Now, a very easy campaign would be to come up with a hashtag, an original hashtag that you will invent with your classmates. And then you try to use that in your social media accounts, announce it in school, maybe say, okay, we will start to do a campaign against racism, or maybe come up with an inventive hashtag, something that would incite the students to use that hashtag and make it a popular hashtag in school. So that becomes a campaign. You have to involve your teachers here and your counselors in school. So those are some of my ideas. Of course, the artistic and the creative aspects, you have different possibilities to do that. You can do maybe a session of poetry reading. If you have a session of students taking the microphone, reading poetry, reading maybe literature that is very symbolic for you as young Koreans. Maybe read some passages of the book of Han Kang. She's inspiring me so much. I read 2 books of hers already. And just after a book reading session, you can ask the students what are their thoughts, share their ideas. Those are simple ways that you can do with your classmates and come up with something that's going to be very meaningful for your school and for your classmates and for yourself. So thank you for that question. Any other questions or comments from our participant? Yes, Wilson.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for, I guess, I don't know if I would call it a presentation or a talk, or anyway, thanks for your time today. I was curious about the masterclass. Before the session, I had done a little bit of research on it. And I was just wondering what, as far as resources for, utilizing the materials of this masterclass in other places, what does that process look like? Is it available in other languages? Clearly the concept is universal because it's, discrimination is kind of, the recipes are the same everywhere. But I was just wondering if the class was sort of tailored to be utilized kind of internationally, and, how would that necessarily work? What does that process look like?
Thank you, Wilson. That's an important question. We designed the master class to be customized according to the local settings. So what I showed you, the video, was just the inaugural session in Paris that we organized with Parisian high schools. But of course, the other master classes that we organize in the different cities use the local language, use the local experts and the facilitators who are in that city, because these are the people that we would like to become resource persons. We do not want, let's say, a French professor who does not know what are the different social challenges in, let's say, in Korean society, who will go to Seoul and do a talk without understanding the context. No, that is not what we want. We want someone who is homegrown, who understands what the issues are, and who can talk to the local participants. We also would like to use the local language. This is very important. And we talked with the Gwangju International Center because we would like to partner with the, there's a UNESCO center in Seoul, which is called the Asia Pacific Center for Education and International Understanding, APCEIU, APCEIU. So this UNESCO center is, I think, a very good resource, an excellent partner for our master classes, because they already know. They have been in South Korea for many, many years. They already know the issues. What are the important topics that we need to tackle in the Korean version of the masterclass? Now, I forgot to tell you, well, I mentioned it during the video. We also invite celebrities in the masterclass. And you know why? It's because we want to get famous people in a masterclass so that the participants will be able to look up to them as role models. These people may be famous. Maybe you see them on television, in movies, or in social media. But they themselves, some of them are really very committed to the issue of fighting racism and discrimination. Perhaps some of them even were victims of discrimination. As I told you in the video, some of those speakers were themselves victims. So they were able to give a testimonial of their experience. And so when these famous people talk in a masterclass, the students become more aware that it can happen to everyone, to anyone. So this is a component that we have integrated in the masterclass. We would like to get some famous people or artists or sports persons who can give testimonials and have a dialogue with the students. That makes it more inspirational as well for the participants. So maybe one day we can organize a master class with the BTS participating in the master class in South Korea. I see that Taeyong is connected, and we have been talking about this for a year now about inviting BTS. Any other questions or comments? But you know, BTS, they were in New York in the UN General Assembly, so that's very powerful. They're very committed. Yes, yes,
Can
Miss. Yes, please.
Hello.
Your name, please.
My name is Jiwon. Yeah. My name is first of all, thank you for having me this question. Actually, my major is child psychology, so I'm quite interested in early childhood development and UNESCO Bridge program. So what I'm curious is that, as I know, in the countries that Bridge program was conducted, like the social awareness about early childhood development or preschool education is quite low, as I know. So how UNESCO did deal with this kind of program about social awareness, about early childhood development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At UNESCO, as I mentioned earlier, we have different program sectors, and one of the biggest sectors is the education sector. This is the letter E in UNESCO, UNESCO. The education sector has a program called the Global Citizenship Education. I'm sure you've heard of that. It is a movement that involves not only governments and ministries working towards building the understanding of what global citizenship is, but it works a lot with experts, the academia, with university students, and especially with your specialization, child psychology, that is important. Curriculum developers, how do you build a roster of textbooks that will talk about these things? Now, UNESCO also works with, I said, the civil society. So there are many organizations working on curriculum development that teaches peace education, human rights education, and also now on the critical issue of how do we put the historical perspective into the textbooks so that young people will understand the antecedents, the history of, let's say, slavery, or maybe the wars that devastated our societies and which paved the way for different attitudes such as racist attitudes. So now there is a big movement, and the UNESCO is working with different institutions on trying to mobilize this knowledge, historical knowledge on the roots of racism and discrimination in society, so that in the textbooks that you have in schools, the students will be able to read about what happened during racial segregation in the United States, for example, or as I said, even in our in the Philippine society, what happened during, let's say, the times of the dictatorship, where freedom of expression was suppressed, and which divided the society into different types of political, economic, and social powers, and which made society also categorized through different socioeconomic categories. So you have the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor, and that phenomenon causes a lot of discrimination in the society, for example. So this is the type of understanding of historical roots that UNESCO is undertaking, so that the generation of today will see it more explicitly in their textbooks. And that child psychology component is very important, because it is not enough to be just talking about these things in school. A teacher is a teacher only when they are in a dialogue with the students. For me, that's the real essence of a teacher. You do not impart information just like that. It has to be two ways. And that's where child psychology is important. You give them the materials, but then you also give them the opportunity to ask the questions and question the materials that you give to the students. I think. So this is what Is Unesco is doing with the ministries of education, for example, trying to come up with innovations in curriculum development and textbook, the production of textbooks, so that they are more aware and sensitized about the societies and their historical backgrounds. And us at the social and human sciences sector, we do not do textbooks ourselves, but we, in the informal and non-formal sectors of education, we partner with cities like Gwangju, for example, to come up with a series of master classes. So this is another thing that complements the formal education process of learning what you learn in school. And then there is another component in our work here in the social and human sciences sector, like the masterclass, for example, where we add an extra layer to the learning process. So there, I hope I answered your question. Thank you. Any other questions? I think we only have 10 minutes left.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes. Please introduce yourself.
Oh, yes. I'm currently outside, so I just disabled my image, but I'm very happy to be joining you today. I'm Kong, and I am working as a volunteer for like the English interpretations for this organization for Gwangju. And my question is, like, in the current society, there are a lot of issues such as global warming, climate change, the inequality between societies and conflict between nations. There are a lot of agents like international organizations or governments or companies that try to solve these problems. What do you think like the international organizations like the UN or UNESCO can do differently than like the actions of governments and companies? And also my second question to you is, what do you look for people when you try to select your employees at the UNESCO or other international organizations? Thank you.
Thank you. Kong, your name? Yeah. Okay. First, I will answer the second question that you have. There are different ways to become they call us international civil servants, by the way. Sometimes there are governments, I imagine in South Korea you have this, there is what you call the Young Professionals Program, the YPP. This is a program where the government identifies young professionals who are eligible according to their criteria. So each government has their own criteria that they will that they will process the application of that young professional to become a young professional at UNESCO. So there is, I believe, a budget allocated by the government. And this is done through the National Commission of the specific country. So there is what we call the National Commission of the Republic of Korea to UNESCO. I think they are based in Seoul. We had one of their senior program specialists yesterday in our masterclass session, Mr. Kim. So there must be an application procedure to be able to assess whether you are qualified to be part of this young professionals program. So this is a very selective process. And then there is also another way where you can just apply online. You have to look at the careers platform of the UNESCO website. There are different posts that are advertised continually. It is updated every day, of course, and it's an online application process, so it is accessible to everyone. Of course, you can imagine that it is open to the public, so there are hundreds and maybe thousands of applications being received by UNESCO for different posts. Another possible way, like what I did, is to start with an internship. So UNESCO has an internship portal. It is also on the website. An internship will give you actually the experience to be able to work at UNESCO with a minimum of 3 months in the different sectors. So you apply to become an intern. There are basic requirements, like I think you have to at least you have finished a bachelor's degree and that you are in a master's degree program, for example. At least that is the case here in the social and human sciences sector. We are welcoming master's degree students as interns. And so these are the 3 ways that are available for applications to become a UNESCO staff member. Now, to answer your question on youth and the role of youth and how can UNESCO work better with youth. Now, maybe one of the obvious mechanisms to do that is engage you already in the master classes. I'm here, I'm available. I can give you my email address, and anyone can partner with UNESCO on the master classes. But there is an institutionalized youth program in UNESCO, which is within the social and human sciences sector, wherein there is a wide range of activities. First and foremost, there is what we call the Youth Forum. The Youth Forum is a regular global conference that is organized with the different governments of UNESCO. And because we had a pandemic, we were not able to organize a youth forum last year and this year. But in the past years, you can Google that, Youth Forum UNESCO. There is an international gathering of different youth participants, youth representatives around the world to take part in a global conference, a week-long, 3 or 4 days, I think, of conference here in Paris. And there are also different versions of the Youth Forum. Some of them are regional youth forums. So this is where the youth can become themselves as the organizers, the panelists, the moderators in the roundtables organized in the Youth Forum. There are many different programs. There is an emerging, an operational program called Youth as Researchers, YAR. This is a program that aims to give more value to the contribution of young people as researchers, as academics, as knowledge holders, to become an important partner of UNESCO. So you can also Google that, UNESCO Youth as Researchers program. This is going to be scaled up in the different regions around the world. So we hope that there is going to be a global movement that will build a group of young research around the world as partners of UNESCO. So these are just some of the activities, but there are others, especially in the social and human sciences sector. I think we are running out of time. If I may ask our organizers, Taeyong or Yana, if they want to say something. There is a survey. You can put your feedback in the survey after the session. You can see that in the chat. But just to have some concluding words for you, I really enjoyed this session. I believe it has been a learning experience for me, and I like the way that we shared, that we turned on our cameras, we spoke, we asked questions. I hope that in one way or another, I was able to give you some pointers, maybe have a few ideas on how you as young people, you indeed have the power in your hands to make change. And so I would like to see maybe one day in a few years' time, maybe with my gray hair and wrinkles, which are beautiful signs of aging, in the coming years, Yana or Taeyong will tell me, Linda, one of the participants in your dialogue session is now a minister of education. So who knows? Thank you very much. I truly enjoyed this, and good luck on your studies. Good luck on your work in your schools and communities. And it has been truly an enriching experience for me. Thank you again to the organizers, the Gwangju Intercultural Center, the city of Gwangju, and the team of Professor Shin with Taeyong and Yana, and everyone in the team. Thank you very much.